All right, looks like we're good to go. So let's go ahead and jump straight into the 7.12 release. Now, in this release, we've had changes to pretty much every product we have. We're going to start with marketing, then look at some of the sales, service, and core function changes that we have, as well as along with anything else that's changed. I'm going to focus not so much on any bug fixes or minor improvements, but things that have actually made a big difference. So let's start by taking a look at the changes that we have in our bpm'online marketing product. And we're going to start with the campaign section. I'm just going to head into our campaign overview. Well, first I want to mention one of the first things that we've changed in our campaign designer and our campaign record is the ability to set automatic start and stop dates for campaigns. So you don't have to manually track your start and stop dates for your campaigns anymore. You can just set that up. That will run automatically. In the campaign designer itself, you open up the campaign designer here. In the campaign designer itself, we have a new element. You might notice that in addition to all the audience, the communication element, we now have the timer intermediate element. This timer element allows us to be even more flexible with setting time frames for our marketing campaigns. All we have to do is state when we want this timer to go off, whether that's once, every day, weekly, monthly, or even any other frequency that we decide, and then to set that expression there. We can even set the time zone at which we want this marketing campaign start, how valid it is. Maybe we have a need to have this timer turn off after a certain period. Maybe we're running some kind of promotional campaign and then we want to make it permanent. We can actually set in a built-in sunset for this timer. And of course, select what days of the week, the period, or an exact time. And of course, this applies whether we're looking at this monthly. We can set this to start the first and last workday, however we want to do it. There's a lot of different ways we can set up this timer element. In fact, we can use this timer element to let us put a pause on sending marketing emails. If, for example, we have a need to work across time zones, you'll note that as a whole, we have this new campaign time zone setup. So not only can I say I want this campaign to run every hour, every 2 hours, we can also say I want this to run in GMT. I want this to run in the US. And then if we have differences, we can actually set, okay, pause for 3 hours and then run once you've reached 9 a.m. US time, even if our campaign is generally set to be running in London. We can also set up a campaign execution delay. You'll notice that's the period for campaign emergency stop in case of critical delay function. Here, what it allows us to do is if a campaign element fails to execute longer than a specified period, so let's say I have a need to send emails at some point, and if that sending takes over, let's say an hour, I can actually have that whole campaign stop, and the owner of this campaign will be notified. So I can make sure that if my campaign runs into problems and starts working much slower than it should, I can actually have this campaign completely grind to a halt and notify me that my campaign is running into trouble, and I can go ahead and examine that and find out what's going on. And finally, in our campaign, we changed the functioning of the add from event element a little bit. What we can do now is use it both for adding event participants and for adding campaign participants to an event audience. So before, we could only use the event element in the beginning of a process. So I can say, I could have a campaign flow that starts with some event, and I can take the audience of that event and then move on and use it further in my marketing campaign. But now I'm actually not limited to doing just that. I can actually have an email, let's say an event invitation, that if people sign up or click the sign up button, they will automatically be added to the event audience. So I can now use this event element in the middle of my campaign workflow as opposed to just the beginning. So that's all the changes that we have here in the campaign functionality. The fact that I can now have my campaign or my event audiences be populated from emails to me is just an amazing new feature that I'm sure if you use our marketing campaign functionality, you're going to find a lot of use for. Next up, we're going to move on to our bulk emails. We had a couple of things that have changed in here. The first, we have a recipients field. You'll notice it's right here, and it actually will display the total number of bulk email recipients that you have. Our progress diagram, currently it's paused, but that has changed as well. We can actually see the specific reasons for our undelivered emails. So I have my bounced, for example, emails. So it's not only just previously we had the delivered and undelivered. So I would see, okay, I have 79 delivered emails and I would just see undelivered 3. But why are they undelivered? Well, now I can actually see that they're either bounced, the sending's in progress, there's been some kind of error, they've been rejected. I can actually see all of that directly on the campaign progress bar. Another new feature that we have, if you use both the marketing and service functionality, this is going to be a huge relief for you. We can actually now send email notifications to contacts who have unsubscribed from bulk marketing emails. So previously, if a contact had unsubscribed from an email list, so they got this email, they clicked on this unsubscribed from email list button, they would actually stop receiving all communication from bpm'online site. So if we had a person in our marketing campaign who unsubscribed, who was also someone that we worked with in terms of support, they would no longer get our emails. They've been unsubscribed. But now actually we have a system setting. Hop over to the system settings section here for a moment. We have a new system setting. It's called system email. Enable option system email right here. And actually, by checking the checkbox, you'll notice that system emails ignores the do not use email flag and contact communication preferences. So again, if someone unsubscribed and we have this system setting enabled, that means they will receive things like automatic email notifications for support cases or portal user registration emails. So we have a way now to still have them be unsubscribed from our bulk emails, but yet still receive system emails that we send to a given contact. A couple more things related to emails. We've improved the sending and delivery error charts. So if we take a look here, you'll notice we have a delivery error chart, sending error chart. So before we just have a single pie graph that would say hard bounce or soft bounce. Now we can actually see when emails were rejected, when they got a hard bounce, when they got a soft bounce. If we have sending errors, we can see those in terms of being able to see whether we sent to a blank email contact, we sent to contact who was unsubscribed, someone whose email address was unreachable, someone whose email address was incorrect. So we can actually really investigate the reasons for our bulk emails failing in a lot more depth than we were able to previously. So that's the main changes that we've had here in the marketing product. A lot of quality of life improvements, the improvements to the campaign functionality, the addition of the timer, with the addition of or the ability of using the event element in our campaigns now in the middle of a campaign workflow instead of just the beginning. I think these things are all going to help immensely if you're going to be using our campaign functionality. Next up, we're going to be taking a couple of taking a look at a couple of things that have changed in our sales product. I'll hop over to the sales product here. The first thing that we don't have as many changes, as many flashy changes to the sales product we had. Marketing product, one of the things that we did change was the ability to copy over projects along with all the tasks. So previously, if you wanted to, for example, repeat an old project that you had stored in our project section, all of the tasks wouldn't copy over, meaning your automatic project completion wouldn't calculate correctly. You'd have to go in, recalculate, recreate all of those tasks. But now we can, by setting the copy button, we'll just copy not only the project, but all the associated tasks with it. The project and task date, we're going to be using the current date as the start task for the project. And that's going to carry over to the end date. So, for example, if we have a project who starts on March 1st and ends on March 15th, if we copy this to start on the March 10th, it'll now end on March 25th. So the duration of the copied projects will also adapt to the current day. So that's all that we really had changed in the sales product. As I said, nothing too flashy, just a little quality of life improvement there with the ability to capture projects. Next up, we're going to be taking a look at the service product. The service product also doesn't have quite as many changes as the marketing product, but we did have a huge quality of life improvement. This is the ability to create a new case from an existing case thread. So let me open up a case here that we have. All right, so here we have a case with an email attached, and actually I can use this functionality now to create new cases directly from this emails. So you'll notice I have this new button I can just click, and a new email or a new case is going to be created directly without me having to go in and register a new case entirely. This actually doesn't only apply to emails, it actually also applies to portal cases. So if someone registers a portal case with two different incidents in their portal message, we can actually create a new incident to handle the second one without having to go any further. Additionally, we can actually now completely modify modify the case management process through the case designer, through our dynamic case management. So we don't have to go change the lookups. Previously, we would have to change a specific lookup to be able to change the case resolution process. Now we can, as we could in all of our other sections, set this up dynamically in the section cases section of our designer here. So that's the main change that we have here in our service product. So I said that's the main changes that we have here in our service product. We did have a pretty major change to some of our core functionality as well. And this is a feature I know people have been asking for pretty much for as long as bpm'online 7 has been out. And this is an expanded timeline. So previously we had the history tab. This allows us to see every single record connected to a given record. So for an account, for example, we can see every single activity, contract, case, call, email, invoice, so on and so forth that's connected to this specific account. But despite it being called history, it wasn't exactly the most useful thing or the most easiest to parse thing when you're looking for some historical chain when you're trying to establish some sort of timeline. Well, we decided just to go ahead and make this timeline on the records where we can see exactly when each new record was created and connected. So, for example, for this account, I can see when these new leads were created. I can see when new activities were created. We have the full range of filtration options where I can filter through emails. I can filter through feeds. If you were ever looking for some old correspondence you just knew you had with a customer and you just couldn't find it, now we can use our search function in our timeline to easily narrow down that exact email. This applies to our feeds. This applies to even attached files. And of course, we can even sort by owner of a given record and restrict our searches to a certain date. So the timeline is, I think, one of the best changes, one of the biggest changes we made to our product, definitely one of the most useful things I've seen in quite a while. We have it available to us in the contact section. We have it available to us in our leads, in our opportunities, and in our cases. And we can actually expand an entire list to see detailed information, or we can see just the titles of the records themselves. So I think the timeline tab, by the way, actually also shows you the owner of a record. So if you ever want to, if you just see some email you want to talk about, all you have to do is hit the expand button, find out exactly who wrote that email, who scheduled that meeting, who's the sales rep on that sale, who was the lead guy on this lead. We can actually get all this information without having to go through 500 clicks, without having to set up columns, nothing like that. Just check my timeline, use my search function. I can find all the information I need. Additionally, this is something that I love to see as in terms of quality of life improvement. Not as major as this, as the addition of our timeline tab, but now your scroll bar position is saved after editing records and details. So you no longer have to, for example, if you add a new record to a detail, you don't have to click through 500 times just to see what the detail represents. Especially if it has multiple columns here, you can actually just scroll through them. All right, another pretty major change is our export tool. Previously, if you remember, our export tool only exported in the .csv file format. That is no longer the case. It will export as an Excel file, an XLSX file. You just go to Actions, Export to Excel. You see it downloads right here. And we have some better formatting for exported files as well. Remember, though, that our export functionality is still limited by current filters. Some other core changes that we've made here in the 7.12 release. Emails that are displayed on our email tab right here. They now show the icons of linked records directly, so we don't have to click on the email to view what records it's linked to, as previously we would have to. Now any emails that we have in our email tab are going to have links to whatever records link. So if we get an email to a contact, an email about an opportunity, an email linked to a case, I'll be able to jump to those records directly from my email tab here in my communication center. I can also, and this is can be relevant if you are providing support services in different languages. You'll be able to actually select languages for email notification templates. So you'll notice that one of the new fields we have in the contact section is this preferred language. Oops, this is an account. Let me go to a contact here. So we have this new preferred language field. If your system has multiple language localizations, for example, English and Spanish, you'll actually be able to specify which contact prefers what language. And then you'll be able to send templates and tag templates with one language or the other, and be able to send templated emails in whatever language the contact prefers. Additionally, and tied with language, and especially if you're working with translating or localizing bpm'online to a different language, outdated translation strings are now going to be removed from the translation section. So you won't be shown localizable strings for objects that no longer exist. Those are going to be automatically removed. All right. In addition to all that, one of the other major changes we made here in 7.12 is some changes to our dashboards, to our analytical functionality. First, you might have noticed that we've changed the design a little bit to make it a little bit more cleaner, a little bit neater, a little bit more pleasant to look at in terms of the UI that we have for our dashboards. One of the big changes, and this, if you've ever seen, is going to be a huge help, is the fact that in our lists, the column headers are now static. So before, if you've made a list and it had like 10 or 20 different records listed there, and you start scrolling, you actually would not see the column headers. Now they stay static, so I can always see what value each column represents. Additionally, I can add however many columns I want to lists now. Before I was limited to 23. Now I can add as many as I want, and if I add more than 23, the system is just going to give me a scroll bar, and I'll be able to scroll vertically to see the additional columns. So it's very helpful. Also with our lists, you'll notice we can actually export list dashboards to Excel immediately using our export to Excel button here. I can also show lists as multi-line if I have multi-line columns created. And of course, lists also have a show more button if the amount of records in a list exceeds the default. Remember that lists are by default created with 5 records, but if I have more records that match the filtration conditions, then those 5, I'll have a show more button here at the bottom and be able to scroll through all of them. And also, this is I'm going to mention a feature here, but I do want to preface this by saying this is still a feature very much in development. Releases that we've had, this new machine learning functionality being added to bpm'online. For example, you might have seen this in the something called ML models, machine learning models. Well, we've implemented our first predictive function in bpm'online, and that is the predictive scoring of leads. What this means is that if you have this feature enabled, bpm'online is going to automatically determine how likely a lead is to turn to an opportunity based on your lead data. That is the predictive scoring here. You can actually learn more by clicking on the link here to go to our bpm'online Academy. Though, again, I do want to preface this by saying this is still a technology that we are developing. This is by no means a final version. And of course, this is machine learning. So the more this feature is used, the more data is generated, the better this predictive scoring is going to be. And you'll be able to see at a glance and be able to trust the analysis that, okay, this lead not worth working with. This lead definitely working with. And you'll be able to much more quickly go through which leads are good, which leads are going to result in opportunities that are going to be converted and which leads are not. So I'm excited to see how this feature is developed. I hope you guys are too. This is, I think, one of the big game changers that we're implementing in our CRM here. Now we have a bunch of minor, I'm just going to go through them a little quickly here. We've changed some integrations. We can now integrate with upgraded Infinity VoIP phones. We can now synchronize with a Microsoft Outlook calendar without having to synchronize with a Microsoft Outlook email address. We can actually synchronize those two separately, as previously we could only synchronize those in tandem. We can now share mailboxes a lot more easily. Let me show you the mailbox settings that we have. Let me add a mailbox here. You'll notice that allow shared, before it was a simple checkbox. Now we have a lot more control over who we share our mailboxes with. We can check the allow shared access and then say adding for a user role. So I can say, for example, first line of support, give them the ability to access, send, and be able to set up the mailbox. So before, this took a lot of digging around in terms of finding the right settings, setting up lookups, making sure everyone has the right rights and all of their user accounts. And now I can just toggle the allowed shared access option there, say, all right, support team, you guys have full access to the support mailbox. I don't have to jump through any additional hoops to set that up as I might have had to previously. We've also added integration for Zoho Mail, and we've improved some of our email processing abilities. Now, here's another feature that I'm pretty excited about, and this is our web services. We can actually now customize integration with web services, and that requires very little developer skill. Before, we really, you really needed to be a developer, and a good one and experienced one, to be able to set up web service integrations with bpm'online or integrations of any type. Now we've made this process a lot simpler. And while you still do need to know how to integrate web processes, we can actually do it simply by adding records and then filling out the necessary fields. So we're not limited to having to work from zero. We can actually do this inside the system with the tools provided to us. For example, you can find integrations for a wide variety of publicly accessible web services that you can really just cut and paste, and that will now work without any problems here in bpm'online. We can even call these web services with business processes. And that's going to play with the call web service business process element. So let's take a look at that. All right. So we have a couple of changes here in our business processes. The first thing I want to mention is, of course, the call web service element that's present right here. The second is the fact that processes can now run in the background. Previously, processes could really start to hamper the performance of a site, depending on how complex and how intensive the process was. Now it is a lot more optimized. It's not so resource heavy. It's not going to present the users with so much of a performance drop as it might have did previously. And users will also receive notifications about business tasks without being just automatically redirected to whatever the process needs you to do at a given moment. So that is a lot of improvement here. And of course, our start timer user element also has the ability, just like we have in the timer element in our campaign designer, to set the time zone. This actually works more or less the same way the timer element of the campaign designer does as well. We've set up pop-ups to let you know when a business process is starting. In terms of optimization, we've also improved. This is something that I personally find to be an amazing quality of life change. This is the ability for sub-process parameters to be automatically updated. Previously, if you changed something in a sub-process, you would have to go back into the main process and change all those connections again, set it up. And now all of these parameters are going to be updated automatically. So I no longer have to manually go through and change things when I'm modifying a sub-process, which speeds up, of course, process design, implementation, and launch and by a factor of at least 2 or 3. I can also trace parameter values. For example, if I set up a business process and I can't figure out why my parameter values aren't being passed correctly, I can actually see that, enable logging. I'll be able to actually see this in the process log. Exactly what the parameters are, what's being passed, if the trace data is available. Now, this is a checkbox that has to be enabled. Logging does have to be enabled in order for this trace data to be collected and to be displayed. Another also major change that we have is improvements to the section designer. Previously, compilation, publishing, all of this took immense amounts of time. Now, however, any change that we made in the section wizard is going to take a lot slower. We've removed the need to compile pages that we change in the section wizard. So they're going to be published without recompiling, meaning that this process is going to take a lot less time. We also have a bunch of bug fixes. You notice how quickly that was. We didn't have to wait for this to compile. I clicked the button, and within a couple of seconds, the page had gone ahead and saved. So this is, I apologize for that. I closed this page on accident. This is a huge improvement over the previous minutes or even 10, 15-minute long waits while something would compile. Of course, we did have a bunch of other bug fixes, a bunch of errors or clarifications that we made. You can actually find those in our release notes on the bpm'online Academy. So if you want to review anything that I've covered today during the overview, just go ahead, head over to the bpm'online Academy, go to the documentation. We have our release notes right here. You'll be able to view all of these changes yourself, be able to go through them. We've made some changes to our mobile application. We've made some changes to development tools. Again, most of this is bug fixes and so on. But still, if you do want to reread about all of these things that I've described, then please feel free to head to our release notes and check it out. Very soon, we're also going to have our bpm'online 7.12.1 release. This isn't going to be a major version change, but we are, of course, always committed to improving our product, to making it better, to making it more useful for our customers and for our partners. Thank you very much for listening to the bpm'online 7.12 release overview. If you have any additional questions, please do let me know via the chat pane. I'll have this session running for another 5-10 minutes to allow people to ask any questions. And again, thank you very much for attending. I will send out videos to all attendees of this overview tomorrow. Again, thank you very much and have a great rest of your day.